The wind howled through Hollow Vale like a living creature, a low cry that made the pine trees bend and whisper. Snow fell thick and silent, covering the crooked roofs of the old settlement and turning the world white and endless. Elara Wynne pulled her threadbare cloak tighter around her shoulders. The cold burned her skin like fire, but she kept walking. Her boots were worn through at the toes, her fingers red and raw, but she didn't stop. Behind her trudged two small figures, her children, Myra and Cale. "Stay close," Elara called over her shoulder. Her voice was hoarse from the wind. "Don't wander off the path." Cale, only 8, struggled to keep up. His small arms wrapped tightly around a bundle of firewood that looked far too big for him. "I'm trying, Mama," he panted. "My hands hurt." "I know, love," Elara said softly, reaching back to steady him. "Just a little farther. We need enough wood for the night." Myra, 12 years old and far too quiet for her age, walked ahead with her chin tucked into her scarf. Her dark hair was tied back in a braid that the wind kept tugging loose. "The storm's getting worse," she said calmly. "We should turn back." Elara's lips pressed into a thin line. "We can't yet. The fire's dying, and there's no warmth without wood." Myra didn't argue. She rarely did. But her dark eyes moved constantly, scanning the forest edges as though she could see things others couldn't. The three of them trudged through knee-deep snow, the sound of their breathing loud in the frozen silence. They passed the edge of the settlement where no one else dared to live, a small cabin at the border of the forest, its chimney already bare of smoke. That cabin was home. It had been built by Elara's husband, Rowan Wynne, before the raiders took him years ago. The villagers never forgave her for surviving when he did not. "Witchblood," they whispered. "She brings bad luck." So she had stopped going to the market except when she had to. Her children grew up knowing how to hunt, sew, and trap food on their own. Survival had replaced comfort long ago. Now, the storm was worsening. The sky had turned grey as iron, the snow falling faster, thicker. Cale stumbled again, dropping a few sticks. "Mama, can we rest?" he gasped. Elara turned to answer, but stopped. The hairs on the back of her neck rose. Somewhere behind them, faint but real, came a sound that didn't belong in the forest. A low, guttural noise. Like a man exhaling after too long underwater. Myra froze too. "You hear it?" she whispered. Elara nodded slowly, her hand moving to the knife at her belt, a curved blade with a handle of bone. "Stay behind me," she said quietly. "Don't make a sound." The three of them moved forward cautiously, leaving the path and stepping between tall pines heavy with snow. The air grew still here, almost too still. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Then they saw it. At the base of an ancient oak lay a man, or something that looked like one. His skin was white as snow, his clothes torn and dark with blood. He was half buried in the drift, an arrow jutting from his ribs, the shaft carved with red symbols that pulsed faintly in the dim light. "Mema," Cale whispered, voice trembling. "Is he dead?" Elara knelt beside the figure, brushing snow from his face. His features were sharp and strangely beautiful, the kind of beauty that made her uneasy. His lips were blue. His eyes were closed. But then, as her fingers touched his shoulder, his eyes snapped open. They glowed faintly, like copper catching fire. Elara stumbled back, heart pounding. The man's hand shot out, gripping her wrist with impossible strength. "Leave me," he said hoarsely, his voice low and rough, like gravel dragged across steel. "Go. Now." Elara tried to pull free, but his grip held fast. "You're bleeding," she said, forcing calm into her tone. "You'll die if we leave you here. Then let death come," he rasped, teeth flashing briefly. It would be mercy. His canines were long. Too long. Her stomach tightened. Myra took a slow step forward, eyes wide. "Mema, his blood isn't red." It was true. The snow beneath him was stained not crimson, but a dark, sluggish black that gleamed faintly as though it was alive. Elara met the man's burning eyes again. "Who are you?" He gave a broken laugh. "Someone you should never have found." The wind howled again, shaking the trees. The storm was nearly upon them. Elara's mind raced. If she left him, he would die. If she helped him, She might bring something worse into her home. But mercy was all she had left to give in this world that had shown her none. Cale, Myra, she said firmly, help me lift him. Mama, his. Now, she ordered. Between the three of them, they managed to half carry, half drag the stranger through the snow, back toward their lonely cabin. His weight was enormous, though he looked lean. More than once Alara thought she heard him whisper words in a language she didn't understand, sharp, guttural sounds that made the air tremble. By the time they reached home, night had fallen. The storm slammed against the cabin walls, rattling the door like fists of ice. They laid the stranger on Alara's bed near the hearth. His face was pale, his lips moving silently, his body trembling. Mama, Cale said, clutching her arm. He scares me. I know, love. Alara pushed him gently toward the fire. Stay back. She studied the wound. The arrow was buried deep, the shaft slick with frost and something oily that smelled like iron and ash. When she touched it, the man hissed, not in pain, but anger. Don't, he warned. It's poisoned. What kind? She asked. Wormwood and silver, he whispered. Sanctified. Made to kill what I am. Alara frowned. And what are you? He met her gaze, his eyes like molten metal. The thing your elders fear, he said softly. A vampire. For a long moment, no one spoke. Only the crackle of the small fire filled the room. Myra stood near the window, her face pale. Cale pressed close to his mother's side, eyes wide. A vampire, Alara repeated, her voice quiet but steady. If that's true, you should have died long ago. The stranger's mouth twitched in a ghost of a smile. I would have, if not for you. Alara studied him carefully. His breath came shallow, his skin glistened with fever, but his eyes burned with a strange, unholy light. He was too beautiful, too still, too dangerous. Whatever you are, she said, you're bleeding to death in my home. So either I help you, or I throw you back into the snow. Which do you prefer? That caught his attention. He blinked, then gave a low chuckle that turned into a cough. You are unusual for a mortal. I'm a mother, Alara said shortly. Unusual comes with survival. She moved to the fire, heated her knife in the flames, and turned back to him. I'll need to remove the arrowhead. It's lodged deep, he warned. If you do this wrong. I don't do things wrong when my children's safety depends on it, she cut in. Myra's voice was soft but firm. Mama, should we really? Yes, Alara said. Get me the cloth strips. The girl obeyed without question, though her eyes never left the vampire. Cale hovered near the hearth, watching his mother's every move. Alara leaned over the stranger. What's your name? Varen, he said finally. Varen Shale. Well, Varen Shale, she said, pressing a hand to his chest to steady him. Try not to die while I'm working. He gave a faint grin. I'll do my best. She worked quickly, her hand steady despite her racing heart. When she pulled the arrow free, black blood spilled down his side, thick and tar-like. The smell made her dizzy, metallic and strange, like burning stone. The vampire clenched his teeth, his muscles straining, splintering the wooden frame of her bed. Cale flinched. Mama, his blood, it's moving. Alara looked closer. The liquid seemed to pulse faintly, like it was alive, reacting to the firelight. Stay back, she said sharply. Don't touch it. When the arrowhead was out, she burned the wound closed with the heated blade. The vampire didn't scream, but his eyes glowed brighter, reflecting the fire like a predator's. When she finished, he lay still for several minutes, breathing raggedly. Then he spoke again. You saved me, he murmured. Even knowing what I am. Alara cleaned her hands on a rag. You were dying in the snow. That's all that mattered. Why? His voice was almost curious. Your kind would rather see me burn. She hesitated, looking at her children, two small figures who had already seen too much cruelty in their short lives. Because mercy costs less than hate, she said quietly. And the world already owes me enough pain. Varen's eyes softened for a moment. Then his expression darkened again. You shouldn't have brought me here. The creed will come. The creed. The Crimson Creed, he said, his tone like a growl. Hunters sworn to purge the world of my kind and any who shelter us. The arrow they used was theirs. Myra's hand tightened around the window ledge. They'll come here. They always do, Varen said grimly. They track blood. Mine. Yours now, perhaps. Ilara frowned. We'll deal with them when they come. You don't understand, he said, sitting up slightly despite the pain. They won't stop until one of us is dead. Then they'll meet someone who's already lost everything, Ilara said coldly. And I have nothing left to fear. Her words silenced him. For a long while, only the wind and fire spoke. Kale curled up beside his sister, whispering, Is he going to eat us? Varen gave a tired laugh. If I meant you harm, little one, I'd have done it already. Ilara shot him a warning glare. That's not comforting. He inclined his head slightly. Then take comfort in this. I owe you my life. My debt is not one I ignore. Good, Ilara said. Then rest. You can repay it by leaving quietly when you're strong enough. But as the hours passed, and the storm outside roared louder, she found herself glancing at him again and again, not with trust, but with something more complicated. Curiosity, perhaps. Fear, yes. But also a strange sense that her world had already changed the moment she dragged him from the snow. Near midnight, Myra spoke softly from her pallet. Mama. Yes, love. The storm sounds like it's whispering, Myra said. Like voices. Ilara frowned. It's just the wind. But Varen opened his eyes, voice faint. Not the wind. The creed is near. Ilara's heart dropped. How near? He smiled weakly. Close enough that your kindness has already doomed you. Morning came late to Hollow Vale. The snow outside the small cabin glowed faintly blue in the weak light, and smoke rose in thin trails from the dying fire. Ilara sat by the hearth, her hands clasped around a mug of cooling tea. She had not slept. Varen Deshale still lay on her bed. He looked almost human now except for the unnatural stillness, the way his chest rose and fell too slowly, and those faint copper glimmers in his half-closed eyes. Myra sat on the floor nearby, quietly carving something out of a piece of wood. Kale was asleep beneath a pile of blankets. The storm had passed, but the silence that followed felt heavier. Ilara watched Varen for a long time before speaking. You shouldn't still be alive, she said quietly. His eyes opened at once. They caught the light like a cat's. I've been told that before, he replied, his voice rough. Ilara frowned. That arrowhead was coated in poison. No mortal could survive that. He shifted slightly, wincing. Then it's fortunate I am no mortal. She looked at the bandage on his ribs. It was dark with dried black blood. How long before you heal? That depends, he said. On whether your fire burns long enough, and whether you can keep the creed away. The word made her stomach tighten. The Crimson Creed. Yes, Varen said softly. Fanatics in holy robes. Hunters of anything that drinks blood or refuses death. They've been tracking me for months. Myra glanced up from her carving. Why? Did you hurt them? A ghost of a smile touched Varen's lips. They think I've hurt the world just by existing. Ilara's expression hardened. And have you? Varen's eyes met hers, and for a heartbeat, there was something ancient and sad in them. Yes, he said simply. More times than I can count. Silence filled the room again. The wind outside whispered faintly through the cracks in the wood. Ilara stood and poured more water into the pot over the fire. You'll need to regain your strength quickly. I can't risk you being found here. You should have thought of that before saving me, he said, but there was no anger in his tone, only dry amusement. I didn't have a choice. There's always a choice, he murmured. She turned sharply, meeting his gaze. Would you have left me in the snow if our places were reversed? He studied her for a long moment before answering. Yes, he said quietly. Because I've seen what happens to those who show mercy. Ilara almost smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Then maybe you were due for a lesson. Before he could reply, the door rattled. Kale stirred in his sleep. Myra's carving knife paused mid-cut. Ilara's head snapped toward the sound. A second knock, soft, then heavier. Varen's expression changed instantly. The faint copper glow in his eyes flared bright. "They're here," he said. Ilara's heart leapt into her throat. "The hunters." He nodded once. "Hide the children." "How? Now?" His voice was sharp, commanding, inhuman. Ilara didn't argue. She grabbed Cale, still half asleep, and pushed him and Myra toward the small trapdoor beneath the rug, a shallow storage pit for food and tools. "Stay there. Don't make a sound," she whispered. Myra hesitated. "Mama. Do as I say." When they were hidden, Ilara turned back to Varen. "You can't fight them in your condition." "I don't need to," he said. "But you can't let them in." The door shuddered again. A voice called from outside, deep and harsh. "Mistress Wynne, open in the name of the Creed." Ilara's pulse hammered. She walked to the door and cracked it open just enough to see. 3 men stood outside, cloaked in furs and carrying lanterns that burned with white light. Their horses snorted clouds of steam into the frozen air. The one in front, tall, with a silver-streaked beard and a scar over his right eye, met her gaze coldly. "Elder Blackthorn," Ilara said evenly. "You shouldn't be out in this cold." His eyes narrowed. "Strange tracks were found leading from the forest to your door. Tracks of something, not human." "There are wolves in these woods," she said calmly. "And I've seen worse." "There was blood," another man said sharply. "Dark blood that froze without melting the snow." Ilara's fingers tightened on the doorframe. "I know nothing about that." Blackthorn's gaze slid past her into the cabin. "May we come in?" "No," she said immediately. "My son is sick. You'll bring him more harm with your cold." "Then you'll not object to us looking through the window," he said, already stepping closer. Before she could stop him, he peered through the frost-coated glass straight toward the bed where Varen lay. For a terrible instant, Ilara's blood went cold. The sheets looked empty, only a faint shadow lay there. Then she realized Varen was gone. The elder frowned. "You're alone?" "Yes," she said quickly. "As you can see." He studied her face, suspicion deepening. "We'll be watching, Mistress Wynne. If you harbor evil, the Creed will cleanse it with fire. Then perhaps start with your own hearts," she said quietly, and slammed the door. Her hands were shaking as she barred it. When she turned, Varen was standing behind her, silent as smoke, eyes gleaming faintly. "They'll be back," he said. "I figured that out," she snapped. "Where were you?" "In the rafters." She looked up and saw faint marks on the beams where frost had formed. "You can do that." He gave a half-smile. "There are many things I can do. Fewer I should." She let out a slow breath. "If they come again, they'll bring more men." "Then you'll need to decide," Varen said softly. "Are you their obedient widow or the woman who dragged a monster from the snow and told him to live?" Ilara met his eyes. "I don't know yet," she admitted. Varen inclined his head slightly. "You'll know soon enough." That night, while the children slept, Ilara sat awake by the fire. Every time the wind shifted, she imagined voices outside, whispers, footsteps, wings. And every time she looked at Varen, she saw both danger and salvation in one body. The storm had ended. But something else had begun. The next evening came with uneasy quiet. The snow outside glittered under a pale moon, and the cold had sharpened to a knife edge. Inside the cabin, the family ate what little they had, a thin stew of roots and dried meat. Varen sat near the fire, half in shadow. Though his wound had closed, his skin was still ghost-pale, and his presence filled the small room like another heartbeat. Cale watched him between spoonfuls of stew. "Do you drink blood?" he asked suddenly. Ilara choked on her tea. "Cale." "What?" the boy protested. "He said he's a vampire." Varen's lips curved in faint amusement. "Yes, little one," he said. "I do. But not from those who offer me shelter." Myra glanced at him. "So you drink from people who don't offer?" Varen's smile faded. Sometimes survival leaves no room for permission. Ilara put her spoon down. "We've survived without taking from others." "You've survived by taking from the earth," he said quietly. "It's the same truth wearing a different face." The room fell silent. The only sound was the fire popping. Cale finally whispered, "You don't seem like the stories." What stories? Varen asked. The ones the elders tell, Kale said. They say vampires turn into mist and crawl into people's lungs. They say you steal children in the night. Varen's expression softened almost sadly. If I wanted to steal you, boy, I'd have done it long ago. Kale nodded seriously, as if that made sense. Myra gave him a look that said you're hopeless. Ilara rose to refill the fire. We'll not talk of stealing or blood. Not while we're eating. Varen's gaze lingered on her. You've seen too much hardship to still believe kindness is free. She turned to him, eyes narrowing. What are you implying? That your mercy has a cost, he said simply. Everything does. Ilara met his gaze for a moment, then looked away. You talk too much for someone half dead yesterday. He chuckled softly. You have a sharp tongue, Widow Wynne. I've needed it. The night deepened. The children went to bed, leaving Ilara and Varen alone by the fire. Shadows danced across the walls. For a long while, neither spoke. Then Varen said quietly, I was not always what I am. Ilara glanced at him. No one ever is. I was born under another name, in a kingdom that has long turned to dust, he said. I had a family. A wife. What happened to them? His jaw tightened. The same thing that happens to everything that stands too close to me. Ilara watched him, reading the unspoken grief in his face. So you run from it. I've been running for centuries, he admitted. From hunters, from the past, from myself. She hesitated. And what happens if you stop running? He smiled faintly. Perhaps the world burns. Or perhaps it ends. Before she could answer, a faint noise outside made both of them freeze, the crunch of footsteps on snow. Not wandering animals this time. Too heavy, too steady. Ilara reached for her knife. The creed again. Varen's eyes flared. Yes. How many? He closed his eyes briefly, listening. 6. Maybe more. Her throat tightened. The children. Go wake them, he said, rising slowly. If they breach the door, you'll take them through the back window. Into the trees. Don't look back. And you. Varen's smile was sharp. I've been hunted before. Ilara hurried to the children, shaking them awake. Quiet now. Stay close to me. Kale blinked sleepily. What's wrong? Trouble, she whispered. At the door, the knocking began again, 3 hard raps that rattled the hinges. A man's voice shouted, by order of the Crimson Creed, open this door or face holy judgment. Varen stood completely still beside the hearth. His shadow stretched unnaturally long across the floor. Ilara's heart pounded. She glanced toward him. What do we do? He didn't answer. Instead, he raised one hand and drew his nail across his palm. Black blood welled up. What are you? Protection, he said. His voice had changed, deeper, layered, as though another spoke with him. By the old laws that bind my kind, I offer you a covenant. Ilara stared. A what? If you take my blood freely given, your lives are mine to guard. The creed will sense it. They won't touch you. And if I refuse, then they'll burn this house with you inside it. The pounding at the door grew louder. Myra's eyes were wide, reflecting the flickering light. Mama, she whispered. Please. Ilara's mind raced. The smell of smoke was faint, the hunters were lighting torches. Your choice, Varen said, holding out his bleeding hand. His eyes glowed like molten copper. But you must choose now. She looked at her children, Kale trembling, Myra clutching her arm, and then at the door, where wood splintered under the next blow. Ilara stepped forward and took Varen's hand. His blood was warm, impossibly warm. It pulsed once against her skin, and a chill ran up her arm like ice and fire mixed together. She gasped, but didn't pull away. The door burst open. Light flooded the cabin, the white blaze of blessed torches. The hunters stormed in, their leader shouting, in the name of the creed. He stopped. Varen turned toward them. His eyes burned brighter than the torches, his voice low and calm. Leave now, he said. Or learn the price of trespass. One of the men raised a crossbow. Demon, he cried, firing. The bolt never reached him. It stopped mid-air, inches from Varen's chest, then dropped harmlessly to the floor. The hunters froze. The leader's mouth moved soundlessly. Ilara stood beside Varen, her hand still slick with his blood. She felt something stirring under her skin, a faint hum, a heartbeat that wasn't hers. The nearest hunter stepped back in terror. What have you done? Varen smiled without warmth. I've made sure she survives this night. Then he moved. No mortal eye could follow. One heartbeat, he was beside Ilara, the next, among the hunters, their torches scattering in a spray of sparks. The air filled with the sound of tearing cloth, splintering wood, and screams swallowed by the wind. Ilara pulled her children close, shielding their eyes. The fire guttered out. Darkness and chaos filled the cabin. When silence finally fell, only the whisper of snow remained. Varen stood in the doorway, framed by moonlight, his chest heaving. The snow outside was stained black and red. His copper eyes dimmed as he turned back to her. It's done, he said softly. You're under my protection now. Ilara's hand still burned where their blood had touched. She looked at him, at the monster she had saved, the man who had saved her, and whispered, "What have we become?" Varen's gaze held hers. "Bound," he said simply. "By mercy, and by blood." The dawn that followed was pale and cold, a ghost of light stretching across a world covered in blood and snow. Smoke curled from the remains of the hunters' torches outside the cabin. The air smelled faintly of iron and ash. Ilara stood by the doorway, staring at the tracks that led away from the house, half-human, half-smeared impressions that froze before they faded. A night ago, those men had come with holy words and fire in their hearts. Now they were gone, scattered to the wind or buried beneath it. Behind her, inside the cabin, the fire was dead. Myra and Kale were asleep, curled together under blankets, their faces pale with exhaustion. And Varen stood at the window, motionless, his eyes reflecting the weak morning light. His skin looked almost translucent, and a faint steam rose from his wounds as they sealed shut before her eyes. "You should rest," Ilara said, her voice still raw from the night. Varen didn't look away from the glass. "I don't sleep as mortals do. Rest invites memory." She turned toward him. "And memory invites pain?" His lips twitched, neither a smile nor a frown. "You understand more than you should." Ilara walked closer, wrapping her shawl tighter around herself. "The children think the danger is over." "It isn't," he said flatly. "The creed will not stop because 6 of their own fell here. They'll send more. When they don't return, their priests will scent the truth. You've tied your life to mine, widow. That means your enemies wear my face now." Ilara glanced back at her children. "Then we prepare for them." "You sound almost fearless," Varen murmured. "I stopped being afraid a long time ago." He studied her, his gaze heavy but not unkind. "You should have been born in another age. The gods would have made you a queen instead of a survivor." "I have no use for crowns," she said sharply. "Only warmth for my children and a roof that doesn't leak." Varen turned away from the window at last. "The covenant has changed you already." "What do you mean?" He approached slowly, each movement smooth and soundless. "You feel it, don't you? That heat under your skin. That weight behind your eyes. The blood knows its kin." She hesitated. "Since last night, yes. I can hear things. The wind outside, even the heartbeat of my children. It's as if the world is louder." Varen nodded. "The bond ties us. You've taken a shadow of my essence, and it won't fade easily." Ilara's hands clenched at her sides. "I didn't ask for this power." "No," he said softly, "but you accepted it. And blood doesn't ask permission to change what it touches." For a long time, the two of them stood in silence, the air between them thick with unspoken things. Then Myra stirred, her small voice breaking the tension. "Mama." Ilara turned instantly. "I'm here, love." The girl sat up, blinking sleepily. "Is it morning?" "It is." "Are they gone?" Ilara looked to Varen, then back to her daughter. "Yes. They won't trouble us again soon." But Myra's eyes had that distant look again, the one that always made Ilara uneasy. "No, Mama," she said quietly. "They'll come again. But not alone this time." Varen's head turned sharply. What do you see, child? Myra frowned, staring into the fire pit where cold ash lay. Someone rides with them. Not like you, but close. He bleeds magic instead of blood. He burns things that should never burn. Ilara felt her stomach knot. What are you saying? She sees beyond, Varen murmured. That gift of hers, it's awakening faster than I thought. She's just a child. No, Varen said quietly. She's something more now. Myra looked between them, fear flickering behind her calm. Did I do something wrong? Ilara knelt and pulled her daughter into her arms. No, my heart. You just see things that others can't. And that's not wrong. It's only dangerous. Varen's gaze lingered on them for a moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was gentler. She's part of the covenant too. It touches all of you. The hunters will sense that soon. Ilara looked up. Then we leave. Where would you go? Anywhere they aren't. Varen shook his head. The creed tracks through prayer and blood. My blood. The covenant binds you to that scent. Then we break it, she said firmly. You can't, Varen said. Not while I live. Ilara stood. Then teach me to fight them. Varen's expression changed, surprise flickering across his face for the first time. You would stand against the creed. They've slain armies. Even I have fallen to them before. I have no choice, she said. You told me I was bound to you. So either I become a shield, or I die hiding behind one. For a long moment, Varen only stared at her, as if weighing something unseen. Then he inclined his head slowly. Very well. If you are to be bound by the blood of shadows, then you'll learn what it means to wield it. He extended his hand, the same hand that had sealed their pact. Come with me. Ilara hesitated, then placed her palm against his. The contact sent a chill through her bones, cold, deep, alive. Close your eyes, he said. Listen. She obeyed. The world shifted. The sound of the fire faded, replaced by the whisper of the snow outside, the pulse of the earth beneath her feet, and faintest of all, the echo of 1,000 heartbeats in the distance. I can hear everything, she whispered. That is what we are, Varen said softly. Predators of silence. Keep that edge, and the creed will not surprise you again. Ilara opened her eyes. You said we're bound. Does that mean you can feel what I feel? His smile was small and unreadable. Only when it's strong enough to shake the blood between us. What if I hate you, she said. Then I would feel that too, he replied, and welcome it. Hate keeps us alive. He turned toward the door. Get your strength. The storm's cleared, but the world hasn't. When night falls, I'll hunt and you'll learn what follows when the hunger wakes. Ilara stared after him as he stepped outside into the snow, his figure dissolving into the pale mist. She should have been afraid. Instead, she felt the strange, unnerving calm of someone whose life had already ended once and who was only now realizing it had begun again. The sun sank early behind the mountains that evening, leaving the world bathed in a soft violet gloom. Inside the cabin, the fire burned low, throwing long shadows across the walls. Ilara sat sharpening her knife on a flat stone, her movement steady. Every scrape of metal against rock steadied her thoughts. Myra and Kale played quietly in the corner, or at least Kale did. Myra mostly watched the fire, her eyes distant, her fingers tracing shapes in the air. Are you making spells again? Kale asked, peering at her hands. Myra didn't look at him. They're not spells. Just lines. They make the world clearer. Ilara listened without comment. Every mother's instinct in her screamed to tell the girl to stop, to turn her face from whatever darkness whispered back, but she couldn't bring herself to silence it. The covenant had already claimed them all. Denial would not undo it. When the door opened, a cold wind swept in, scattering ash. Varen entered, his cloak heavy with frost, his eyes glowing faintly. You found them, Ilara said. He nodded. 2 leagues north. A new party of hunters, 15 this time. They carry relics from their church, and a man who bleeds power. A blood mage. Ilara frowned. Like the one Myra saw. Varen's expression darkened. Yes. They'll come before dawn. Kale stiffened. Then we have to run. Varen looked down at him, voice calm. You'd never get far enough. The mage can taste my blood through the snow. The covenant links you to it. So what do we do? Ilara asked. Varen turned to her. We survive. But to do that, I need you to trust me completely. Ilara snorted softly. Trust doesn't come easily to me. Then think of it as necessity. He walked closer, kneeling before the fire. The covenant binds me to protect you, but it also gives you power drawn from my essence. That connection runs both ways. Tonight, we deepen it or we all die when the creed arrives. Ilara's pulse quickened. Deepen it how? With blood and will, he said simply. You've tasted my blood once. Now I must taste yours. Myra looked up sharply. No. Ilara's jaw tightened. What happens if I refuse? Then when the creed's fire reaches your walls, I will burn with you. The fire crackled. For a moment, all she could hear was the whisper of wind outside, and her own heart beating too loudly. Finally she said, do it. Varen's gaze softened almost imperceptibly. You won't regret this. I already do, she said. He reached for her hand, turning her wrist gently. His fingers were cold, but his breath was warm when he spoke. Once it's done, the bond will be complete. You'll feel me as surely as I feel you. Then his mouth brushed her skin and his fangs sank in. Pain flared bright and sharp, then faded into heat that spread through her veins like fire turned to silk. She gasped, gripping his shoulder, feeling her heartbeat echo in his chest. When he drew back, 2 dark drops lingered on his lips before he wiped them away. It is done. Ilara's knees trembled. What did you? He placed a finger to her lips. Listen. She did. The world changed. The crackling of the fire sounded like thunder. The snow outside whispered against the windows, each flake a heartbeat. And beneath it all, she heard another rhythm, deeper, older. Varen's heart, echoing inside her own. Myra stared at her mother, eyes wide. Your eyes, she whispered. They're glowing. Ilara blinked, and the faint shimmer faded. What have you done to me? Given you a fraction of what I am, Varen said. Now when they come, you'll stand with me, not behind me. Kale's voice was small. Will Mama become like you? No, Varen said, his tone unexpectedly gentle. She'll remain herself, but stronger. Ilara exhaled shakily. You said you were bound to protect us. Does that mean you can die for us? He nodded. And I would. But tonight, I'd rather kill for you. A sudden sound interrupted him, distant at first, then closer. The soft thunder of hooves. The jingle of weapons. Myra's head snapped up. They're here. Ilara grabbed her knife, her mind already calculating routes and walls. Kale, stay by the back door. If I tell you to run, I won't leave you, he said stubbornly. You will. Varen stood, his presence filling the room like a shadow come alive. The covenant shields this home, but their mage will sense it soon. Once he breaks it, they'll strike. How long? Ilara asked. Minutes. He turned to her. When I step outside, bar the door. No matter what you hear, don't open it. Ilara grabbed his arm. You can't fight them alone. His copper eyes flared. This is what I am. She shook her head. And I'm what you made me. We fight together. A brief silence stretched between them, then he nodded once. So be it. He threw open the door. The night howled in, filled with torchlight and voices shouting prayers. Snow swirled around them like ash. Varen stepped out first, his cloak snapping like wings. Ilara followed, blade gleaming in her hand. The hunters had formed a semicircle at the edge of the clearing, torches held high, their faces grim. At their center stood a man in red robes, his eyes glowing with inner fire, the blood mage. So, the mage called, his voice carrying easily through the wind. The devil hides behind a widow's skirts now. Fitting. Varen's smile was a baring of teeth. Come test your faith. The mage lifted his hands, chanting words that turned the snow red underfoot. The torches flared brighter. Heat rippled through the air. Ilara's blood thrummed, the covenant answering the threat. She could feel Varen's power surge through her veins like a tide. For the first time, she understood what it meant to share his darkness. The first hunter charged. Varen moved like lightning, catching the man mid-stride, twisting, breaking, gone again before the body hit the ground. Another fired a bolt. Elara caught its gleam, turned, and it shattered against an invisible force around her. The mage snarled, drawing blood from his own palm to fuel his spell. The ground split, crimson light spilling upward. Varen staggered, his strength faltering under the sanctified fire. Elara didn't think. She moved. The knife in her hand burned with the same fire that pulsed in her veins. She hurled it, the blade spinning straight and true. It struck the mage's arm, and the spell broke in a flash of white light. When the brilliance faded, the clearing was littered with snow and silence. The remaining hunters fled, dragging the wounded mage with them. Elara stood panting, her breath turning to mist. Her arm burned, her heart hammering too fast. Varen approached, his expression unreadable. "You fought like one born of shadow," he said. She looked at him, chest heaving. "You said I'd stand with you," she said. "I didn't plan on kneeling." He smiled faintly. "Then perhaps you never will." As the night closed around them, the snow began to fall again, soft, silent, endless. And though the fire inside the cabin still glowed, Elara knew warmth would never mean the same thing again. The snow had not stopped falling since the battle. It came in thick waves, muffling every sound except the wind. The small cabin was surrounded by the stillness of death. Hunters' torches buried under ice, their blood frozen into crimson veins along the ground. Elara stood outside long after Varen had gone silent. Her knife dripped with dark liquid that steamed where it touched the snow. She had killed for the first time that night, not to survive, but to protect. The realization didn't make her tremble. It only made her feel hollow. Behind her, the cabin door creaked open. Myra stepped out, her small frame wrapped in a blanket. Her face looked pale in the moonlight, eyes wide and knowing. "Mama," she whispered. "They won't come back, will they?" Elara turned slowly. "No," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "Not tonight." Myra's gaze shifted to the crimson snow. "The ground's bleeding." Elara glanced down. Where Varen's magic had burned through the hunters, the snow had melted into a dark, glassy crust, red frozen in white. "Go inside," she said. "Wake Kale. Pack your things. We can't stay." Myra didn't move. "His hurt," she said softly. Elara frowned. "Varen?" The girl nodded. "He's not healing this time." Elara's breath caught. She followed her daughter back into the cabin. Varen lay near the hearth, half slumped against the wall. His skin was gray, the glow in his eyes faint as dying embers. The mark of the covenant on Elara's wrist, the faint silver scar where their blood had mingled, pulsed weakly in response. "What happened?" Elara asked, kneeling beside him. Varen opened his eyes slowly. "The mage spell. His fire was sanctified, the kind that burns deeper than wounds. Can it be healed?" "Only with time," he said. "Or with more blood than I'm willing to take." Elara stared at him. "Mine?" He hesitated. "No. The covenant's bond would protect you from death, but not from what comes after. I won't take from you again." "You'll die," she said sharply. He smiled faintly. "I've done that before." Elara clenched her fists. "You can't protect us dead." Varen looked at her, something almost human flickering in his expression. "You care more than you should. And you talk too much for someone half dead," she snapped. He laughed weakly, and the sound, low and broken, made her chest ache. She turned to Myra. "Get water. Bring whatever herbs are left." Myra obeyed, silent as a ghost. Kale came running from the back room, still sleepy and frightened. He froze when he saw Varen's condition. "Mama, is he?" "He'll be fine," Elara interrupted, though she wasn't sure she believed it. "Go help your sister." As the children worked, Elara cleaned the wound along Varen's side. The skin was charred where the mage's fire had touched him, black lines spreading like cracks in stone. The smell of burnt flesh filled the air. Varen's hand caught her wrist suddenly, his grip weak but insistent. "You shouldn't waste your strength." She met his eyes. You said the covenant binds us. Then your life's tied to mine. If you die, I die. That's not how it works, he murmured. Then let me pretend it is. He stared at her for a long moment before his hand loosened. You're stubborn. I learned from someone worse. Hours passed. The fire burned low, the storm outside raging harder. Myra and Cale fell asleep beside the hearth. Ilara stayed awake, pressing damp cloths to Veren's wound, whispering prayers she hadn't spoken since Rowan's death. At last, Veren stirred. His breathing steadied. The black marks along his ribs began to fade. He looked up at her. You prayed, he said softly. Yes. Your God doesn't answer me anymore. Then you'll borrow mine, she said simply. Veren chuckled faintly. You're not afraid of much, are you? I was, she said, her voice quiet. But fear doesn't keep my children alive. Action does. He studied her face, the streaks of soot on her skin, the exhaustion in her eyes, the fierce steadiness of her mouth. You remind me of someone I once knew, he said. Who? My wife, he murmured. Before the curse. Before I traded her warmth for immortality. Ilara's throat tightened. And what happened to her? I couldn't save her, he said. So I learned to save others instead. It never worked. They fell silent. The fire hissed softly, and outside, the snow thickened until the world vanished beyond the window. By dawn, the storm had ended. The clearing was quiet again, the red snow glittering under morning light. Veren stood by the door, wrapped in his cloak, his wounds mostly healed. You're leaving, Ilara said. He nodded. The Creed will regroup. They'll send someone stronger next time. I can't fight them here again, not without drawing every hunter in the north. You'd abandon us. I'd protect you, he said. From myself, from them, from what this covenant will make of you if it continues to grow. Ilara shook her head. We've already crossed too many lines to turn back now. Veren looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. You have your husband's courage. She stiffened. You don't know him. I know what grief does to the living, he said quietly. It carves out room for something darker. Myra appeared in the doorway, clutching her blanket. Mama, don't let him go. Ilara hesitated. He has to, love. Myra shook her head. No, he doesn't. The dreams say he can't. The dreams. The ones I've been seeing, she whispered. About fire and wings and a woman made of silver light. She says the covenant isn't finished. Veren's eyes narrowed. A woman of silver light. Myra nodded. She called you by name. What name? Veren Deshale, son of the old blood. Veren went still. That's impossible. Ilara frowned. Who is she? He turned slowly toward the window. If she's who I think, then she's the reason the Creed won't stop. And if she knows the covenant exists. He looked back at them, eyes blazing faintly. Then your family's part of something far greater than mercy. By midday, the air had cleared enough for travel. The storm had buried the hunters' remains, leaving only red streaks beneath the snow where they had fallen. The forest stood quiet, ancient and watchful. Veren insisted they leave the cabin. Every blood trail ends here, he said. When the Creed returns, they'll burn what's left. We'll be gone before their flames reach us. Ilara packed quickly. She took food, water, the worn blanket that had once been Rowan's, and the knife she'd carried since her wedding day. Myra gathered her small carvings and a scrap of parchment where she sketched strange runes she claimed she saw in her dreams. Cale stuffed a pouch with dry bread and stared at the door, frightened but silent. When they stepped into the snow, Veren led them north. His movements were soundless, his cloak trailing like a shadow. The air grew colder as they climbed higher into the mountains. By dusk, they reached the edge of a ravine where an ancient bridge of stone stretched across a chasm. Below it, frozen mist glowed faintly, a soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Myra stared down. What is that? Veren's expression was unreadable. Old magic. The kind the world forgot when it learned to fear the dark. Ilara frowned. We're crossing it. Yes. On the other side lies the Vale of Hollowmere, safe ground, for a time. As they crossed, the wind rose, whistling through the cracks in the bridge. Halfway across, Myra stopped. "Mama," she whispered. "Someone's here." Ilara turned sharply. "Where?" Myra pointed to the far side of the bridge. A tall figure stood waiting, cloaked in silver, motionless, face hidden beneath a hood. Varen's pace slowed. "No," he murmured. "It can't be." The figure stepped forward, the wind tugging back her hood. Her face was pale and beautiful, her eyes like liquid mercury. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm and resonant. "Varen D. Shale," she said. "You've broken your oath." Ilara stepped in front of her children. "Who are you?" The woman's gaze flicked to her. "You must be the widow. Answer the question." The woman smiled faintly. "Celine Vera. High Matriarch of the Silver Court. Varen's sire and his sin." Ilara tightened her grip on the knife. "Another vampire." Celine inclined her head gracefully. "Older than most. And wiser, I would hope." Varen's expression hardened. "What are you doing here, Celine?" "I might ask you the same," she said. "You swore never to bind mortal blood again. Yet here you stand, covenant made, hunters slain, prophecy stirring." Ilara's heart pounded. "Prophecy?" Celine's eyes turned toward Myra. "Ah. The child." Myra hid behind her mother's cloak. Celine's smile deepened. "She sees the dreams already, doesn't she? Flames. Wings. The blood dawn." Varen took a step forward. "Leave them out of this." "I can't," Celine said softly. "The child is marked by the Covenant's power. The creed will come for her, and so will others less kind than I. Then we'll protect her." "You?" Celine's laugh was soft, sad. "You can't protect even yourself. You broke the sacred law when you mixed your blood with hers. The council will demand your head and theirs." Ilara's temper flared. "They'll have to find it first." Celine turned her gaze on her, amusement flickering in her silver eyes. "You have spirit, mortal. No wonder he broke for you." Varen's hand closed around the hilt of his blade. "If you mean to harm them." Celine raised one pale hand. "Peace, old friend. I came to warn you, not fight. The Creed's mage survived your little massacre. He rides now to the Silver Court, offering alliance to those who want the Covenant undone. If they agree, you'll face both blade and fang." Ilara's stomach twisted. "So everyone wants us dead?" "Not everyone," Celine said. "But enough." She looked at Myra again, her tone softening. "The girl's visions are gifts of old blood. They will grow stronger, dangerous even to her. Bring her to the court, and she may learn to control them. Refuse, and the dreams will consume her mind." Ilara stepped closer. "And if I say no? Then pray your vampire is fast enough to keep you alive when the nightmares wake." With that, Celine stepped backward. The wind rose in a sudden gust, and when it cleared, she was gone, nothing left but silver snow swirling in her place. Ilara turned to Varen, heart hammering. "Who was she to you?" Varen's jaw tightened. "Everything I loved once, and everything I regret now." Myra clutched her mother's hand. "She's not lying, Mama. The dreams are getting worse." Ilara looked at her daughter, then at Varen. "Then teach her to control them." He nodded slowly. "We'll start tonight." As they descended into the frozen vale, the snow glowed faintly red under the moon, the light of the Covenant pulsing in their blood. And though the night felt endless, Ilara knew one thing with certainty: the debt between her and the vampire was no longer one of life. It was one of destiny. The air in the vale was thick with mist and cold that crept under the skin. They had found an abandoned shepherd's hut near the river, its roof sagging but the walls still sound. Inside, the fire crackled faintly while the children huddled close together. Outside, Varen kept watch, silent and still as a statue carved from night itself. Ilara laid out the few belongings they carried: a loaf of hard bread, a tin of herbs, 2 knives, a blanket too small for 3. She had stopped thinking of comfort. Survival was a language she spoke without words now. Myra sat near the hearth, knees tucked to her chest, eyes half closed. Her lips moved in whispers no one else could hear. Ilara looked at her daughter uneasily. "Myra," she said softly, "what are you saying?" The girl blinked slowly, as if waking from a dream. "They're showing me things," she murmured. "The fire has faces tonight." Ilara crouched beside her. "What faces?" "Yours." "His." Myra's small hand pointed toward the door where Varen stood. "And something behind you both. It's made of shadows and teeth." Ilara's throat tightened. "It's just the dreams, love. You're tired." Myra shook her head. "No. They're not dreams anymore." Varen entered then, brushing snow from his cloak. "She speaks true," he said quietly. "The covenant has opened her sight. She stands half in the waking world, half in what lies beneath it." Ilara rose to face him. "Can it be stopped? Would you stop the sunrise?" His tone was not cruel, only honest. "It's part of her now. What we can do is teach her to control what she sees. And if we fail, then the visions will burn her mind to ash." The words hung between them like smoke. Kale, half asleep under the blanket, stirred. "Myra's not going to burn," he mumbled. "I'll keep her safe." Ilara knelt beside him and kissed his hair. "You will, my heart. You always do." Varen knelt opposite Myra, his eyes gleaming faintly in the firelight. "Close your eyes, little one." Myra obeyed. "What do I do?" "Listen to the flame," he said. "Hear its voice, not its roar. There is a rhythm underneath, steady and calm. Find that rhythm." For a few moments, the only sound was the crackle of burning wood. Then Myra's breathing slowed. The tension in her small shoulders eased. "I see it," she whispered. "It's like a heartbeat." "Good. Now hold to it. When the other voices call, remember this one. It is yours. The fire answers you, not the other way around." She nodded, brow furrowed in concentration. "There are doors, too. So many doors. Some are locked. Some are open." Varen's tone grew sharper. "Don't open the ones that call your name." "Why?" "Because they don't know who they are calling," he said. Myra trembled. "One of them just did." Varen reached forward, resting a hand on her head. "Then close it. Imagine it sealed with flame. Burn the name before it leaves your lips." The fire flared bright, throwing sparks up the chimney. Ilara took a step forward, ready to pull her daughter away, but Varen held up a hand. "She must finish it." Myra's lips moved again. Her voice changed deeper, echoing, as though a second voice spoke through her. "By blood and bone, I seal the gate." Then she opened her eyes. The glow in them faded, leaving only exhaustion. Ilara rushed to her, pulling her close. "It's over." "Yes," Varen said softly. "For now." Myra looked up at him, her voice barely a whisper. There was someone on the other side of the door. Varen frowned. "Describe them." "She wasn't scary," Myra said. "She looked like me. But older. And she said something strange." "What did she say?" Ilara asked. "The blood dawn is coming," Myra murmured. And then she smiled. Varen went still. "The blood dawn," he repeated. "So Celine was right. The prophecy stirs." Ilara frowned. "Prophecy or not, she's just a child. She's the heart of the covenant now," he said. "If she falls, the bond breaks. If the bond breaks, none of us survive." Ilara's hand tightened protectively around Myra. "Then we'll keep her safe." Varen looked at her, eyes shadowed. "You don't understand. The world itself will hunt her now. Vampires, priests, even those who claim no faith. Every faction knows what her gift means." "And what does it mean?" Varen hesitated. "That the line between life and death will soon vanish. And she stands at its center." Outside, thunder rolled soft and distant, though the sky was clear. Myra flinched. "They're listening," she whispered. Ilara looked to the door. "Who?" Varen's gaze darkened. "The Bloodsworn. The Creed has found our trail again. They fled before dawn." The mountains loomed high above them, their peaks sharp against a gray sky. The river beside the trail was frozen solid, and every step cracked the ice like breaking glass. Varen led the way, silent and swift. Ilara followed with Myra and Kale close behind. They moved for hours without speaking. The cold gnawed at their bones, but fear kept them moving. By midday, they reached a clearing ringed with black pines. Varen stopped abruptly. The air felt heavier here, the silence unnatural. "Why are we stopping?" Ilara asked. "We're not alone," he said quietly. The wind shifted, carrying a scent, sweet, metallic, ancient. The same scent that clung to Varen but colder somehow, sharper. Then a soft voice spoke from the shadows. "You always did have a flair for dramatics, my son." Ilara spun around. A figure stepped out from between the trees, tall and graceful, wrapped in a cloak of shimmering silver. Her hair fell in waves as pale as moonlight, her skin like polished marble. Her eyes, when they met Ilara's, gleamed like liquid mercury. "Celine," Varen said. The name came out like a curse and a prayer at once. "Don't look so surprised," she said, smiling faintly. "You didn't think I'd let the Creed have all the fun." Ilara moved in front of her children. "If you've come to finish what they started." Celine laughed softly. "Please. If I wanted you dead, you'd be snow by now. I came to talk." Varen's tone was cold. "You never come without purpose. Say what you came to say." Celine's gaze drifted to Myra. "The child dreams already, doesn't she?" Myra pressed closer to Ilara. "You were in my dream," she whispered. Celine's eyes softened. "Yes. You called, and I answered." Ilara's pulse quickened. "Stay away from her." "I can't," Celine said calmly. "She's the key to everything. The blood dawn cannot rise without her." Varen stepped forward, voice low. "Enough riddles." Celine tilted her head. "Very well. The covenant you made bound your souls together. But it also awakened something dormant, the bloodline of the first dreamers. The girl carries it now. She can see beyond life, beyond death. If she learns control, she could command both." Ilara felt dizzy. "Command death. Or release it," Celine said. "Which is why the Creed hunts her. And why the Silver Court will soon do the same." "Then what do you want?" Varen asked. "To save her," Celine said simply. "Bring her to the court. I'll shelter her. Train her. Protect her from what's coming." Ilara shook her head. "You expect me to hand over my daughter to vampires?" Celine's smile was thin. "Your daughter is already half-shadow. You can't change that." "She's still my child," Ilara said fiercely. "And she always will be," Celine said. "But if you keep her, the Creed will burn every village from here to the sea. They won't stop until she's ashes." Varen's voice was tight. "You speak as if you care for humans now." "I care for balance," Celine said. "You upset it when you made the covenant. Now I'm here to repair the damage." She reached into her cloak and drew out a small vial. Inside, silver liquid shimmered. "This will mask the covenant's scent for a time. A gift for her." Ilara didn't move. "What's the price?" Celine smiled faintly. "There's always a price. But not today." She held out the vial. Ilara didn't take it. Instead, Myra stepped forward, small and trembling, and accepted it. "Thank you," she whispered. Celine brushed a pale hand over her hair. "You'll understand, one day. The blood sings to its own." Varen's jaw clenched. "Go, Celine. Your presence alone could draw them here." "I've already gone farther than I should," she said. "But remember, my son, you cannot protect her forever. When the blood dawn rises, the world will call for her name." Celine stepped back, and the snow began to shimmer. For a moment, her form dissolved into silver light, then she was gone, as if she had never been. The silence that followed was deafening. Kale whispered, "Mama, who was that?" Ilara stared at the empty space where the woman had stood. "A reminder," she said quietly, "that monsters wear beautiful faces." Varen turned toward her. "We'll move before dusk." "You believe her?" Ilara asked. "I believe her power," he said. "And her warning." Ilara looked at Myra, who still held the vial. The silver liquid glowed softly in her small hand. "What do we do with it?" "Use it," Varen said. "It will hide us for a while." Myra uncorked it carefully. The scent that rose was like cold rain and iron. She poured a few drops into the snow, and the wind shifted, no longer biting, but strange, heavy with unseen presence. Cale frowned. It smells like thunder. Varen nodded. That's the scent of borrowed safety. As they continued north, the world seemed to hold its breath. No birds called. No tracks marked the snow but theirs. Even the sun hung low, an ember half swallowed by clouds. Ilara walked beside Varen. She said you broke an oath. I did, he said. Long ago, I swore never to bind mortal blood again. The last time I did, it ended in ruin. What happened? She loved me, he said. And I loved her. That was the ruin. Ilara's voice softened. And you think this will end the same way? He looked at her, eyes burning faintly. It already has. They walked until night fell, then made camp in a small hollow beneath the cliffs. Myra lay between them, asleep at last. The silver vial glowed faintly beside her. Ilara stared into the fire. If she's right, if this blood dawn is coming, what happens to us? Varen's voice was quiet. Then the world will remember our names, even if it burns for it. Ilara looked at him, firelight dancing across his sharp features. And if we survive? Then we'll see what dawn really means, he said. Outside, the wind shifted again, carrying faint echoes, voices that whispered her name through the trees. Ilara closed her eyes and tightened her hold on her children. The night was endless, the fire small, but for the first time she felt the stir of something she had long forgotten, resolve sharper than fear. The snow kept falling, covering the last traces of blood. Above them, the stars burned cold and clear, watching in silence as the Covenant carried its chosen deeper into the dark. The next morning dawned grey and heavy, the world caught between snow and sky. The family's small camp was tucked beneath a cliff of ice, the wind keening through its cracks like distant voices. Ilara awoke to silence so deep it pressed against her chest. For a moment she didn't move. She listened to her own heartbeat, to the slow rhythm of the children's breathing, and to the almost imperceptible hum that lived in her veins now. Varen's blood still sang inside her, faint but constant. Varen was already awake, crouched near the edge of the cliff, his eyes fixed on the horizon. The wind tore at his cloak, but he stood unmoving, the image of something half mortal, half storm. Ilara rose quietly, her boots crunching on the frost, and walked to him. You didn't sleep, she said. He didn't look at her. I don't need to. That's not what I asked. He turned then, the faintest smile at the corner of his mouth. Old habits. You can't keep watch for a century and forget how. What are you watching for? Everything, he said simply. The creed. Celine's spies. The hunger inside me. Ilara crossed her arms. I don't trust her. Neither do I, he admitted. But she rarely lies. When she says the court will come for us, they will. Then let them come. Her voice was quiet but steady. I've run enough for one lifetime. Varen studied her, the pale morning light cutting through the mist between them. You'd stand against an army? I already have, she said. I stood against starvation, against winters that wanted my children's bones, against the silence after my husband's death. I'm done running from monsters, living or otherwise. Something in Varen's expression softened. You'll die for that defiance one day. Maybe. But not today. He was about to reply when Myra stirred in her sleep, muttering softly. Her hand twitched, and the snow around her seemed to shiver. Ilara rushed to her side, kneeling quickly. Myra, she whispered, shaking her shoulder gently. Wake up. The girl's eyes flew open, glowing faintly for an instant before dimming. They're coming, she gasped. Through the river. The water moves with them. Varen's head snapped up. The creed. Myra nodded weakly. And others. The air smells wrong. Varen drew his sword, a long, curved blade that shimmered faintly like moonlight on steel. We move. Now. They gathered what little they owned and fled along the frozen riverbank. The snow deepened, the trees closing in around them. Ilara carried Cale on her back while Varen half led, half dragged Myra, who stumbled as if her visions were blinding her. The hum of the Covenant grew stronger with every step, the blood bond between them pulsing in warning. By the time they reached the next ridge, the first shadows appeared through the mist, dark shapes moving across the river ice. The sound of hooves echoed faintly. Then came the chant. By the light that burns eternal, by the blood that stains the wicked. Varen's jaw tightened. The creed. He turned to Ilara. Take the children and climb. Follow the ridge north until you find a cave. I'll hold them. She grabbed his arm. No. Ilara. You can't fight them all. His copper eyes flared. You think I haven't before. I think you'll die if you do, she said fiercely. And if you die, the bond breaks. We all die. For a heartbeat, they stared at each other, predator and mother, both equally stubborn. Then Varen's lips curved into something between a snarl and a grin. Then we fight together, he said. They moved as one. Ilara hid the children in a hollow beneath a fallen pine, whispering instructions she could barely force past her throat. Myra's hand trembled as she clutched her mother's wrist. Mama, don't let them take him, she said. He's part of the dream now. Ilara didn't understand, but she nodded. Stay with your brother. Don't move until I call. When she rejoined Varen, the first of the hunters had reached the shore. There were at least 20 men and women in red-trimmed armor, carrying torches and spears tipped with silver. At their front rode a man in black mail, a white cross painted over his chest. His voice carried like thunder. Varen Deshale, he shouted. By the law of the Crimson Creed, you are condemned. Step forward, and the woman and her spawn will be spared. Varen's laughter rolled out across the snow, cold and sharp. Your kind always did love lies. Then you choose death, the man said. I chose that centuries ago. The leader raised his hand, and the first volley of arrows screamed through the air. They struck the ground in bursts of light. Varen moved faster than sight, catching two in his hands and flinging them back with enough force to impale the shooters. The snow exploded into fire. Ilara darted through the smoke, her knife flashing. She moved like she'd always known how to kill, her strikes quick, efficient, silent. She didn't think, didn't hesitate. She protected what was hers. Varen fought beside her, a storm of motion. His blade sang, each swing left trails of light through the air. For every hunter that fell, another took their place, chanting prayers that burned the sky. Then Ilara saw him, the mage from before, the one who had survived the last battle. His face was half-scarred, his eyes burning red with fury. He raised both hands, and the river cracked open, glowing from beneath. Ice shattered, sending shards flying. You'll not escape again, demon, he roared. The ground split. Varen was thrown backward, his sword clattering away. Ilara sprinted toward him, but the mage's spell reached her first, a wave of heat and pain that sent her sprawling. She screamed, her body writhing as light seared her veins. She could feel the covenant twisting inside her, fighting the spell. Varen roared her name. He lunged to his feet, tearing through 3 hunters before reaching her. He knelt beside her, his hand gripping hers. Stay with me. The mage sneered. You've damned her, creature. The blood that binds will burn her alive. Varen's eyes blazed. Then let it burn me first. He pulled Ilara close and whispered something in the old tongue, words that made the air tremble. Power surged from him in a shockwave, scattering the hunters and breaking the spell. The mage stumbled backward, his face pale. Ilara gasped, the fire inside her chest fading. Varen's grip loosened. She looked up at him, horrified. What did you do? Shared the cost, he said softly. As the covenant demands. Blood ran from his nose, dark and thick. He looked weaker by the second, his breath ragged. Ilara pushed herself upright, fury and fear mixing in her veins. No more, she hissed. No more sacrifices. She rose, the knife still in her hand. Her veins glowed faintly, silver fire threading beneath her skin. When the next group of hunters rushed forward, she met them head-on. The knife cut through their armor as if it were smoke. The bond between her and Varen thrummed, and each movement felt guided as if invisible hands steered her blade. The battle ended as quickly as it began. When the last hunter fell, silence reclaimed the forest. The snow was red again. Ilara turned to find Varen kneeling, blood dripping from his chin, his skin ashen. She knelt beside him. You shouldn't have done that. You would have died. And now you might. He smiled faintly. Worth the trade. She shook her head, pressing her hand against his wound. You owe me a roof and a fire. Don't die before you pay that debt. He looked at her, something soft in his eyes. I'll try. Behind them, Myra emerged from hiding, Kale clutching her hand. She looked pale, but her eyes were clear, too clear for a child. Mama, she whispered. It's not over. The storm's coming again. Elara didn't argue. She only nodded. Then we'll be ready. They buried the fallen in the snow, a quiet, grim task done by morning light. Varen helped where he could, though his strength was fading. He moved slowly now, every gesture deliberate, as if each breath carried a weight he could barely hold. When the work was done, Elara built a fire at the edge of the clearing. She sat before it with Myra and Kale close, Varen standing a few paces behind. For a long time, none of them spoke. Finally, Myra broke the silence. I saw something again. Elara tensed. What did you see? The river, Myra said quietly. But it wasn't frozen anymore. It was full of blood. The sky was red, and the trees were burning. I heard voices, people crying out, not just here but everywhere. Varen's gaze sharpened. And what else? Myra hesitated. You were there. Both of you. But you weren't the same. Mama's eyes were black. And you, she looked at Varen, you had wings. Elara frowned. Wings? Big ones, Myra whispered. Made of fire and shadow. You were fighting something I couldn't see. And then everything went quiet. Kale shifted uneasily. It's just dreams, Myra. Varen shook his head. Not dreams. Prophesize. The Blood Dawn isn't just a story, it's a memory waiting to happen again. Elara looked at him sharply. What does that mean? It means the first covenant, the one that created my kind, began the same way. A mortal and an immortal bound by blood, and a child born between them who could command life and death. The world called it salvation then. Later, it called it blasphemy. Elara's breath caught. You think Myra? I don't think, Varen said. I know. The words hit her like a blow. No, she said quickly. She's just a girl. Just a girl who silences fire with her voice, he said. Who dreams the future and bends snow to her will. She's more than either of us now. Myra's eyes filled with tears. I don't want to be. Elara pulled her close. You don't have to be anything, my heart. You're mine. That's all that matters. Varen looked away. It's not that simple. The creed will never stop. Celine's court will come soon. And when they do, they'll demand the child. Then they'll die trying to take her, Elara said. Varen's expression was unreadable. You'd fight the entire Silver Court? I'll fight anyone who threatens my family. For a moment, the silence between them was electric. The bond pulsed faintly, her heartbeat and his, echoing as one. Varen stepped closer, lowering his voice. There's another way, he said. A place called the Sanctuary of Ash. It's where my kind were born, before the curse became law. If we can reach it, we might break the bond, free you all from this. Where is it? Far north, he said. Beyond the mountains. A place even the sun refuses to touch. Elara met his gaze. Then that's where we go. Myra looked up. What if the dreams follow us? Varen glanced at her, his expression solemn. They will. But at least there, we'll have a chance to face them on our terms. They broke camp at dusk. The journey ahead was long, the air colder by the hour. The snow beneath their feet glittered faintly, streaks of silver running through it, like veins of light. The covenant pulsed stronger with each step northward, as if it was guiding them toward something vast and unseen. When night fell, they stopped in a grove of dead trees. The moon hung low and red, its reflection rippling in the river below. Elara sat near the fire, watching the shadows shift along the ground. Varen, she said quietly, if this prophecy is true, if the world really burns again, what happens to us? He was silent for a long moment. Then he said, maybe we become the fire. Elara didn't answer. She stared into the flames until they blurred, her mind full of too many things she couldn't change. Beside her, Myra dreamed again, murmuring names that weren't in any language she knew. Varen kept watch, his sword resting across his knees, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Far to the east, a faint red glow began to rise, not dawn, but something older, hungrier. The blood dawn. And beneath that light, the snow turned the color of ash. The valley below the mountains had once been a place of quiet. Now it reeked of smoke and salt. Elara smelled it before she saw it, the sharp bite of ash, the memory of something precious turning to cinders. She knew the scent well. It was the smell of endings. They came down through the trees at dusk, the snow crunching underfoot. The children walked close together, small shadows swallowed by the forest. Varen stayed behind them, watchful. His eyes, bright in the fading light, swept the horizon again and again. When the trees thinned, Elara stopped short. Her breath left her in a single broken sound. Below them lay Hollow Vale, her home. What had once been a cluster of low cabins and fields was now only ruin. Fire crawled over the roofs, licking up what the snow had failed to hide. The sky glowed red as blood. Somewhere within the burning heap, the wind carried the faint cry of voices. Kale clutched her hand. "Mama." "I know," she said, her voice barely holding steady. The flames threw long, writhing shadows. She could make out the spire of the small chapel where she had once prayed, the well her husband had dug, and beyond it, the ash that had been their cabin. Everything she had known was gone. Varen's voice was quiet behind her. The creed came back. Elara turned, eyes blazing. "You knew they would." "Yes. You could have warned me." "I did," he said evenly. "They never stop." The words hit her like a slap. She wanted to scream, to strike him, to break something. Instead she took a long breath and looked back at the burning valley. Myra's small voice broke the silence. "There are people down there," she whispered. "They're still alive." Varen's expression shifted. "Impossible." "She's right," Elara said, already moving. "Look." Through the smoke, they saw a group of villagers huddled near the edge of the square. A dozen at most, faces smeared with ash, eyes wide with terror. The flames hemmed them in on three sides. "They're trapped," Elara said. "We have to help them." Varen caught her arm. "You can't save them all." She yanked free. "Then I'll save the ones I can." She ran, the children crying out behind her. The air grew hotter, the snow hissing as it melted beneath her boots. Smoke stung her eyes, and every breath seared her throat. She reached the nearest cabin, its roof caving in, and pulled free a door beam blocking the way. A woman stumbled out, coughing, clutching a child to her chest. "Elara," the woman gasped. "The hunters, they came looking for you. They said you were cursed." Elara's stomach twisted. "Go north," she said. "There's a path along the ridge. You'll be safe there. The others. I'll find them. Go." Varen appeared behind her, his cloak black against the firelight. "They won't make it far," he said. "Then help them," Elara snapped. He gave her a long, unreadable look before he turned toward the flames. A moment later, he was gone, moving faster than the eye could follow. When she saw him again, he was carrying two more villagers out of the burning houses, his movements effortless. His face, however, was that of a man at war with himself. By the time the fire began to die, the village was silent. The survivors huddled together on the frozen road, staring at Elara as though she were something both sacred and cursed. One man, soot covering his face, spoke at last. "You did this," he said, pointing a shaking hand at her. "You brought this death upon us." Elara's jaw clenched. "I didn't light those fires. But you brought the monster," he spat. "They came for him, and we paid the price." Varen's shadow fell over them both. "They would have come whether she lived here or not," he said. "You were already marked by their zealotry." The man shrank back, fear flickering in his eyes. "You're a devil." Varen smiled faintly. "If I were, you'd already be ash." Elara stepped between them. "Enough. Go. All of you. The forest will hide you until dawn." When the last of the villagers had vanished into the trees, Elara turned back to the ruins of her home. She walked through the blackened timbers, her boots crunching on glass and bone. She knelt where her table had been, now only char. For a long moment she said nothing. Varen stood a few paces behind her, silent. The firelight flickered against his face. I built this place with my hands, she said softly. Every wall, every board. Rowan carved our names into the doorframe. Now look. Varen's voice was low. I warned you what this life would cost. She turned sharply. Then why save me at all? Because mercy is rarer than blood, he said. And I hadn't tasted it in centuries. She stared at him, breathing hard, fury and grief warring in her chest. I don't need your mercy. Maybe not, he said quietly. But the world does. The words silenced her. The wind carried embers into the night, tiny red sparks that looked like fallen stars. Ilara finally stood and faced him. We can't stay here. Where to now? North, he said. To the sanctuary. What's there? Truth, he said. And answers you won't like. She nodded once. Then we go. The four of them left Hollow Vale behind. As they walked, the light of the burning village faded until it was only a red smear on the horizon. Ilara didn't look back. She couldn't. They traveled north for 3 days, through valleys drowned in mist and forests thick with frost. The world grew quieter the farther they went, as if even the wind had forgotten this place. The mountains rose higher, black teeth biting into the sky. At night, they slept in caves or beneath fallen trees. Myra's dreams came more often now, her murmurs echoing through the dark. Sometimes she spoke words that didn't belong to any tongue Ilara knew. Each time she did, the flames of their campfire flickered blue. Varen seemed restless. He would leave at dusk and return before dawn, bringing meat or roots he said he found near the river. His eyes glowed brighter every night. On the 4th evening, as they crossed a frozen marsh, Ilara finally asked, "What are you hiding from me?" He didn't answer at first. The moonlight caught on his face, turning his expression unreadable. "The ghost roads," he said at last. "We're walking them." "What does that mean?" "This place was once a passage between worlds," he said. "Before mortals built their kingdoms, my kind crossed these paths to feed and to flee. Every step we take here stirs old spirits. Some are harmless. Some are not." Kale pressed closer to his mother. "Spirits?" Varen's gaze softened. "Echoes of those who couldn't find peace. Don't listen if they call your name." They moved on. The ground beneath the snow was uneven, filled with long cracks that glowed faintly in the dark. The air shimmered, bending light into strange shapes. Once, Ilara thought she saw a figure walking beside them, a woman with her own face but hollow eyes. When she blinked, the vision vanished. By the time they reached the next ridge, the children were too tired to continue. Varen helped Ilara build a small shelter of pine branches. The wind howled outside, carrying whispers. "They're close," Myra said suddenly, sitting up. Her eyes shone silver. "They're following the trail of our blood." "The creed?" Ilara asked. "Not just them," Myra said. "Something older. Something angry." Varen stiffened. "The dead of the ghost roads. They're waking." Before Ilara could speak, the air grew colder. The fire guttered. From the mist, figures began to take shape, pale forms half seen, moving without sound. Their faces were blank, their eyes hollow voids. Kale whimpered. Ilara drew him close, knife in hand. "What are they?" "Souls who lost their way," Varen said. "They feed on warmth, on memory. Stay behind me." He stepped forward, drawing his blade. The ghosts recoiled from its light, hissing like water on flame. But more appeared, crawling from the mist until they surrounded the camp. Myra's voice trembled. "They're saying names, Mama." Ilara froze. The whispers grew louder, her name, her husband's, her children's. Rowan's voice among them. "Ilara, come home." Tears stung her eyes. "No," she whispered. "You're not him." The ghosts surged forward. Varen slashed, the blade singing through air and shadow. Light flared, scattering several, but more filled their place. They pressed closer, clawing at the living. Then Myra stood. Her small body trembled, her eyes blazing white. "Enough," she cried. The air shuddered. Every ghost froze. Fire erupted around the camp, not red or orange, but pure white flame. The ghosts screamed and dissolved into smoke. The light lingered for a moment, then dimmed. Ilara caught her daughter as she collapsed. Myra's skin burned with fever. Varen stared at the fading light, awe and fear mingling on his face. She banished them, he whispered. No mortal has done that since the First Age. Ilara brushed hair from Myra's damp forehead. What's happening to her? The covenant is growing through her, he said. It's too strong for one body. She needs the sanctuary soon, or it will tear her apart. Ilara held her child tighter. Then we keep moving. They walked again at dawn. The world looked different now, emptier, but somehow more alive. The air smelled faintly of salt and ash. The ghost roads had let them pass, but not without a price. Every few miles, Ilara saw flickers of movement in the corner of her eye, shapes watching, waiting. When the sun finally broke through the clouds, Varen stopped and looked back. We're nearly there, he said. Beyond the next mountain lies the sanctuary. Ilara followed his gaze. Far in the distance, a faint light shimmered on the horizon, a pale blue glow rising from the snow. It didn't look like dawn. It looked like the edge of another world. She reached for Myra's hand and squeezed it gently. Hold on, my heart. We're almost safe. Myra's voice was faint. Mema, safe doesn't mean what it used to. Ilara looked down at her daughter's pale face, the strange light in her eyes. She didn't argue. She just kept walking, the wind biting her cheeks, the snow crunching underfoot, the covenant pulsing between them like a second heartbeat. Behind them, the path they'd taken shimmered for a moment, ghostly footprints fading into mist. Ahead, the mountains waited, sharp and silent. Somewhere beyond those peaks lay whatever truth the sanctuary held, and whatever price it would demand. By the seventh night, the wind had turned cruel. It came howling down the mountain like a beast let loose, dragging knives of ice through the air. Ilara's breath misted before her face as she trudged forward, each step sinking deep into snow that glowed faintly blue under the strange light ahead. The glow grew brighter as they climbed. The mountains opened into a hollow valley, vast, still, and utterly silent. At its center stood a structure carved from black stone, half buried in frost. Towers bent under the weight of centuries, their spires cracked, their walls laced with runes that pulsed like veins of faint fire. The sanctuary, Varen said, his voice low. Ilara stared. You've been here before. Once, he said. When the old world still bled. Myra clung to her mother's hand. It's singing, she whispered. Ilara frowned. What do you mean? The stones, Myra said softly. They're humming. They know we're here. Varen's expression tightened. She's right. The covenant calls to its birthplace. They crossed the frozen plain. The nearer they came, the more the air shimmered, strange colors shifting through the frost, rippling like water. Ilara could feel it too now, a vibration in her bones, a low resonance that matched her heartbeat. At the gates of the sanctuary, Varen stopped. Two enormous doors of obsidian loomed before them, engraved with symbols that glowed faintly as he approached. He placed his hand on the stone. The runes flared to life. It remembers you, Ilara said. It remembers my sin, he replied quietly. This is where I broke my first covenant. What happened here, Varen? He hesitated, eyes fixed on the glowing runes. There was another woman once. Centuries ago. Mortal, like you. I made the first blood pact with her, to protect her, to save her from death. But the covenant spread. It bound the living and the dead together. The world couldn't bear it. The curse began here. And now you've brought us back. He turned to her, voice soft. To end what I began. The doors opened with a sound like thunder cracking through ice. A wave of cold air poured out, carrying whispers that were not wind. They stepped inside. The interior was vast, lit by flickering blue light that seemed to come from nowhere. The floor was covered in frost so clear it reflected everything: walls, faces, even the flicker of fire in their eyes. Pillars of ice rose like ribs to a vaulted ceiling high above. Myra walked ahead, drawn to the center where a circular dais stood. At its heart was a pool of frozen blood, dark, shimmering, ancient. Symbols carved around it glowed faintly red. "This is the heart of it," Varen said. "The source of every covenant ever made." Ilara stared at the pool. "It's alive." "Yes," he said. "Every drop here belongs to those who broke their vows, who defied the balance of death." Myra's eyes were wide, luminous. "It's whispering my name." Ilara grabbed her shoulder. "Don't go closer." But Myra took another step. The glow of the runes grew brighter, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. The frost beneath her feet cracked, the sound echoing through the hall like distant thunder. "Varen!" Ilara shouted. He moved instantly, reaching Myra just as the ice gave way. His hand caught her wrist, pulling her back from the edge. A burst of crimson light erupted from the pool, filling the hall with a roar that shook the walls. The air thickened with power so old it felt alive. When the light faded, a figure stood where the pool had been. It was a woman, tall, draped in tattered robes, her hair black as ink, her skin pale as bone. Her eyes burned with the same copper fire as Varen's. "After all these ages," she said, her voice echoing like 1,000 whispers at once. "The prodigal returns." Varen froze. "Lyria." Ilara looked between them. "You know her." "She was the first," he said. "The one I swore to protect, and the one I damned." Lyria smiled, her teeth white and perfect. "And now you bring another to the altar. How poetic." "You never change, Varen." Ilara stepped forward, knife in hand. "Stay away from my children." Lyria tilted her head, eyes gleaming. "Your blood sings with his power. You've already joined the dance, widow. You can't pretend innocence." Varen's voice hardened. "She's not you." "No," Lyria said softly. "She's worse. I chose damnation willingly. She was tricked." Ilara's jaw tightened. "I chose to save my family. And that's how it always starts," Lyria said. "Love, mercy, desperation, the oldest lies in the world. You think the covenant saves, but it only binds. It will eat you alive, Ilara win." Varen stepped between them. "What do you want, Lyria?" "The same as you once did," she said. "To end the curse. But only one of us can hold the blood that seals it." Her gaze slid to Myra. "And the child has what neither of us does, purity. The dreamer's soul." Ilara moved instantly, placing herself in front of her daughter. "You'll have to go through me." Lyria smiled again, and the air crackled. "Gladly." The light around her flared crimson. The walls trembled, shards of ice raining down. Varen drew his sword, his eyes blazing. The air filled with the smell of iron and frost. "Stay behind me," he ordered Ilara. "Not this time," she said. "We fight together." They met Lyria's fury head-on. The hall filled with sound, steel clashing against magic, fire against ice. Every strike shook the ground. Ilara's knife flared with the same light that pulsed through her veins, each blow echoing with the bond's power. Lyria laughed, her voice rising above the chaos. "You can't kill what death has already claimed. Then I'll remind you what life feels like," Ilara snarled, driving her blade into the woman's side. The wound hissed, smoke curling from it, but Lyria didn't fall. She staggered back, fury flashing in her eyes. "So it's true. The covenant has grown stronger." Varen's blade met hers in a flash of light that turned the frost beneath them to steam. "You were the first mistake," he hissed. "I won't let you be the last." Their blades locked. Lyria leaned close, her voice a whisper. "You can't kill me without killing yourself." "Then I'll take the risk." He drove his sword through her heart. There was a sound like 1,000 bells shattering. Light burst from Lyria's chest, spilling out in ribbons that spiraled around the hall. She screamed, her body dissolving into smoke and flame. The pool beneath them cracked, its glow fading to darkness. When it was over, silence returned. Ilara dropped to her knees, panting. "Is it done?" Varen stood over the fading light, his sword still burning faintly. "No," he said. "The curse doesn't die with her. It passes on." "To who?" Myra stepped forward, her eyes glowing faintly. "Me." The first red moon rose that night, vast and terrible, bleeding light across the snow-covered valley. The air thrummed with energy, and even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The covenant had awakened fully, and the world had felt it. Ilara sat near the edge of the sanctuary, her children beside her. Myra lay asleep, her small hands glowing faintly with that same crimson light. Kale had not left her side once. She hasn't woken since it happened, Ilara said quietly. She will, Varen said, though his voice lacked conviction. He stood at the edge of the cliff, the red moonlight painting his pale skin. When she does, she'll be more than she was. Ilara rose and joined him. You mean she'll be like you? No, he said. She'll be something else. Something new. She folded her arms. You sound afraid. I am, he admitted. This moon marks the blood dawn. The Creed will come with their armies, and the court won't be far behind. They all want what sleeps inside her. Then we'll fight. He looked at her. You've grown used to saying that. I've had practice. Before he could reply, the ground trembled. A deep sound rolled through the mountains, a horn, long and low. Varen's head snapped toward the horizon. They're here. From the ridge below, lights flickered, hundreds of torches winding their way up the mountain path. The Crimson Creed had arrived. At the same time, the air behind them shimmered, and figures emerged from the snow, pale soldiers draped in silver, the banners of the vampire court glinting in the moonlight. Ilara's stomach turned to ice. We're surrounded. Varen's expression was calm, deadly. Then we stand where the world can see us. He drew his blade. The runes along its length blazed like molten fire. Ilara turned to Kale. Stay with your sister. Whatever happens, don't leave her side. He nodded, eyes wide with fear. What about you? I'll come back. She joined Varen at the entrance to the sanctuary. Below, the two armies clashed, silver against crimson, steel against flame. The ground shook with every blow. When the first of the Creed's soldiers reached the gates, Ilara met them head-on. Her knife moved faster than thought, guided by the pulse of the bond. Each strike left trails of light. The air filled with screams and the scent of burning metal. Varen fought beside her, his movements a blur. He moved like a storm, cutting through both mortal and immortal alike. The bond between them pulsed stronger than ever, their hearts beating as one. Then a voice thundered across the battlefield. Enough. From the ranks of the Creed stepped the Blood Mage, his robes torn, his eyes burning with red fire. You cannot fight destiny, he roared. The blood dawn consumes all. He raised his hands. The red moon flared brighter. Power erupted from the sky, striking the earth in a pillar of flame. The blast threw Ilara backward. She hit the ground hard, vision spinning. When she looked up, she saw Varen standing before her, his body wreathed in fire. The mage's spell had struck him full force, but he didn't fall. Varen, she screamed. He turned, his face calm, almost peaceful. Stay with her, he said. Keep her safe. Don't you dare. But the rest of her words were lost in the roar of the storm. Varen lifted his blade, calling on every drop of power that had ever cursed his blood. The sky split open. Wings of flame burst from his back, vast and terrible. The mage faltered, his power faltering under the onslaught. Varen's voice rose, ancient and terrible, echoing through the mountains. By blood and by oath, I end this. He struck. The sword met the mage's spell in a blinding flash of light. The explosion tore the valley apart. The armies scattered, the moon dimmed, the air screamed. When the light faded, only silence remained. Ilara rose slowly, her body trembling. The battlefield was empty, bodies turned to ash, banners burned. And there, at the center of the devastation, Varen knelt, his sword buried in the ground. His wings were gone, his eyes dim. She ran to him, falling to her knees. Varen. He smiled faintly. The curse is broken. For now. Tears blurred her vision. Don't leave me. You still have them, he whispered. That's enough. His hand reached out, brushing her cheek once before it fell. The glow in his eyes faded completely. Ilara's cry echoed across the valley. Behind her, Myra stirred. The light around her flickered brighter, responding to the bond that still pulsed faintly through her mother's blood. She rose slowly, her eyes glowing like dawn. Mama, she whispered. He's not gone. He's waiting. Elara looked up at the red moon, now paling into grey. Where? In the place beyond blood, Myra said. Where night becomes morning. The wind carried her words away. The first light of a new day broke over the horizon, painting the frost in gold. Elara stood, her daughter's hand in hers, and turned toward the path that led north, where shadows still lingered, and the promise of the blood dawn waited to rise again. The valley was silent after the battle, smothered under a grey sky heavy with unfallen snow. Ash drifted through the air like slow, dying rain. The wind carried whispers, fragments of screams, prayers, and names the dead would never answer again. Elara stood among the ruins, her cloak torn and her hands still stained with blood that wasn't hers. Around her, the remnants of the battlefield lay scattered, broken banners, twisted armor, the bones of men and monsters frozen into the earth. Varen's body lay where it had fallen, still as carved stone. His sword, half buried beside him, pulsed faintly with a dying light. The red moon had finally faded, leaving only a dull, colorless dawn. Myra knelt beside him, her small hands folded in silence. Kale stood behind her, holding one of the burned banners like a makeshift staff. Neither child spoke. Elara's voice broke the quiet at last. We'll bury him here. Kale looked up. Mama, he said he'd wake again. Elara's throat tightened. He said many things, love. But he's gone now. Myra shook her head slowly. No. I can still feel him. Somewhere. Just not here. Elara wanted to argue, to pull her daughter away, to tell her not to hope, but she couldn't. Because deep in her own chest, beneath the ache and exhaustion, she felt it too, the faint pulse of something alive in the bond. She set her jaw. Then we'll keep him safe until he returns. They dug the grave with their bare hands, the frozen earth cutting their skin. Elara worked until her fingers bled, until her breath came in clouds that burned her lungs. When the ground was deep enough, they lowered him in Varen Deshale, the creature who had once been her enemy, then her savior, then something she could never name. Elara placed his sword beside him, the blade humming softly as it touched the earth. Myra pressed a small pendant, a charm of braided twine and bone, into his hand. So he doesn't lose his way, she whispered. When the grave was filled, Elara stood over it for a long time, the cold seeping through her boots. Kale spoke first. What happens now? We go north, Elara said. He wanted us to reach the sanctuary's far gate. Maybe that's where the rest of his truth lies. And if the creed finds us again, they won't. But she said it too quickly, and all three of them knew it was a lie. That night, they camped on the ridge above the valley. Elara didn't sleep. She sat by the fire, her eyes on the horizon, where the faintest shimmer of red still tainted the clouds. The battle had ended, but the war, the one whispered in Myra's dreams, had only just begun. Near midnight, a sound drifted through the dark, a soft hum, almost like singing. Myra stirred in her sleep. Mama! Elara turned toward the sound. It was coming from below, from the valley where they had buried Varen. The air shimmered faintly, the snow glowing as if touched by moonlight. Myra rose, eyes wide. It's him. Elara caught her wrist. No. You stay here. But the girl only smiled faintly, her eyes glowing faintly silver. He's calling both of us. Before Elara could stop her, Myra walked into the snow. The light followed her, swirling around her feet like living mist. Elara hesitated only a moment before following. They reached the gravesite. The mound of fresh snow glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Myra knelt and placed her hand on it. Papa Varen, she whispered. Wake up. We still need you. Elara's heart clenched. Myra, don't. The snow trembled. A fissure split the ground. From the crack, light poured, deep red and silver mixed. Elara stepped back, shielding her face from the brightness. The light flared once, twice, then faded into the shape of a figure standing over the grave. Varen. But not as he had been. His body shimmered faintly, translucent, the air around him bending like heat over fire. His eyes, no longer purely copper, burned with twin flames of gold and white. Varen, Elara breathed. He looked at her, and the faintest smile curved his lips. You buried me too soon. Ilara's chest tightened. What are you? Between, he said simply. Not living, not gone. The covenant won't release me until its purpose is fulfilled. Myra reached toward him. Does it hurt? Varen shook his head. Not like before. The pain is quieter now. He turned his gaze to Ilara. The blood dawn isn't over. The war just sleeps. When it wakes, you'll need to stand where I can't. I can't fight what you fought, Ilara said. You can, he replied. Because you already did. The light around him flickered. He began to fade. No. Myra cried. Don't go again. Varen's voice softened. I'll always be near. You'll find me where the light meets shadow. He looked once more at Ilara. North, widow. Always north. Then he was gone, leaving only silence and the faint scent of ash and frost. Ilara stood motionless, her breath misting in the cold air. She didn't weep. She couldn't. The fire had burned too deep for tears. Myra took her hand. We have to finish it, Mama. Ilara looked down at her daughter. The girl's eyes glowed faintly in the dark, reflecting the last spark of the red moon. Yes, Ilara said. We will. By morning, the sky had turned a color Ilara had never seen before, neither dawn nor dusk, but something in between, like the world had forgotten which way time was meant to turn. The wind had changed too. It no longer howled or screamed. It whispered. They left the valley behind, walking north as Varen had said. The path wound through jagged peaks where the snow never melted. The cold was so deep it felt alive. Myra walked ahead, guiding them with quiet certainty. Her skin glowed faintly now, her breath leaving trails of silver mist. Kale followed behind, clutching his sister's cloak, determined not to let go. Ilara carried the knife Varen had forged, the blade that had slain Lyria. Its hilt was warm to her touch, as if it remembered her grip. Days passed. Nights blurred. The higher they climbed, the more the world changed. The sky shimmered like glass, and the stars hung too close, their light strange and watchful. At last, they reached a plateau overlooking an endless expanse of ice. In the distance, at the edge of sight, stood a single tower made of black stone, the far gate of the sanctuary. It rose like a spear piercing the heavens. That's it, Ilara whispered. Myra nodded slowly. He's waiting there. How can you be sure? Because the light is calling. They crossed the frozen plain. The wind screamed again, this time carrying echoes, voices from the past, cries of the fallen. The covenant was awake, and it knew their names. When they reached the tower, they found its door standing open. The air that poured out was cold enough to steal breath. Inside, the walls were carved with thousands of names, each glowing faintly red. What is this place? Kale whispered. The end of every promise, Ilara said. At the center of the chamber stood an altar of pure ice. Upon it burned a single flame, black as night, flickering without light or heat. Myra stepped forward, her reflection dancing across its surface. It's alive, she whispered. Ilara's chest tightened. Don't touch it. Myra turned to her. I have to. This is what he meant. Before Ilara could stop her, Myra placed her hand above the flame. It flared, not outward, but inward, into her. The air rippled. Symbols along the walls began to move, twisting into new shapes. The ice beneath their feet cracked. Myra. Ilara ran forward, grabbing her shoulders. The girl's eyes had gone completely white. It's okay, Mama, she said softly, though her voice was no longer entirely her own. I can see him. I can see everything. What do you mean? The covenant, it's not a curse. It's a bridge. Between death and life, light and shadow. He built it so the world wouldn't die alone. Ilara shook her head. You're just a child. You can't. I'm not just me anymore, Myra said. I'm all of them. Light exploded from her chest. The runes along the walls ignited, spreading up to the ceiling. The black flame leapt higher, its color shifting from darkness to brilliant silver. The tower shuddered. Kale fell to his knees, covering his head. Myra, stop. I can't, she cried. It's too much. Ilara pulled her close, wrapping her arms around her. Then let it through us. Like before. Together. The bond answered. The light that poured from Myra spread into Elara, filling her veins with searing heat. She screamed, but did not let go. The energy coursed through her, through them both, then burst outward. Outside, the frozen plain shattered. The light raced across the horizon, touching every corner of the north. The world trembled. Then came silence. When Elara opened her eyes, the light had gone. The tower was cracked open, its flame extinguished. Myra lay limp in her arms, breathing softly. Cale ran to them. Is she? She's alive, Elara said, her voice shaking. Just asleep. They carried her outside. The sky had cleared, revealing stars that no longer looked cold. The red moon was gone. In its place rose a pale silver sun, soft and new. Elara set Myra down gently. The girl's skin still glowed faintly, her face peaceful. Cale looked up at the sky. Is it over? Elara stared into the distance. The mountains glimmered with light, their shadows fading. She felt no more whisper in her blood, no more pull from the covenant. Only quiet. Yes, she said softly. It's over. But even as she said it, the wind shifted. A faint voice drifted through the air, a whisper, half memory, half promise. You kept your vow. She turned. For a heartbeat, she saw him, Varen, standing at the far edge of the plain, his figure formed of mist and light. He smiled, the same faint, tired smile she had seen so many times. Elara took a step forward, her throat tight. Will I see you again? Always, his voice echoed. Every dawn that rises from blood and shadow. Every dream she dreams. Then he was gone. Elara stood for a long time, the wind brushing her hair, the first light of the silver sun painting her face. She looked down at her children, Cale awake and watchful, Myra sleeping with the calm of something eternal, and felt the strangest thing of all. Hope. She turned north again, though there was nowhere left to go. The world was quiet. The fire had burned itself clean. Mama? Cale asked. Yes. Where do we go now? Elara smiled faintly. Anywhere the sun touches. They walked into the light, the snow melting beneath their feet, the sky stretching endless and clear above them. And behind them, far away, the last of the crimson light faded from the world. The blood dawn had ended. But something new had begun. Every story leaves a shadow, and if you've made it this far, you've walked through the darkness with us. Don't let the light fade here. Hit subscribe, ring the bell, and join me beyond the next dawn where new blood rises, new worlds burn, and every ending is just another beginning. Like, share, comment your theory below because the next chapter belongs to you.